Welcome. I now call this April 20th, 2023 regular meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rehook up to it.
We'll move on to item 1.03. I just want to welcome all of our distinguished guests. We're so honored to have you here to celebrate our Teacher of the Year and our support staff of the year. We as the board are so thankful for your service, and again, really looking forward to celebrating you tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Anders Phillips.
Actually, we're going to start first by showing a video prepared by the Communications Department, Mr. Ed Rich.
This is what's called a cold open. Listen carefully, please.
What's up? What's going on, brother?
It's the best gun in the world. This man is the best.
Morning. How we doing today, family? Good. Who's excited about the coding?
I'm using coding to get infinite money. I've done this time with this game.
Let me see.
It's crack. So I can whenever.
Oh, so you got to figure it out already then.
Yeah.
Did you wait? I'll wait with you. Here we go.
So how is, that's that word.
Alright, this is going to take you like a month to get through a sentence on that. We're working on this. What you got? What you working on? That's pretty cool. Well, you was almost done.
A little bit of instruction on this question here because it barely fits on the screen. When we're looking at this question right here, it says above that this is the population graph with mean 85 and standard deviation 18. I understand this is a lot to read, so I'm going to put it nice and big right here. The following graphs of these choices is a sampling distribution. So we're in chapter 7 for our question right here. For the sample mean X bar, for samples of size 40 taken from the population. So think this over, may want your formula sheet out while working. I'm going to give you guys a minute or two to consider, and we will discuss it together. Good. So those conditions we've been beating into the ground here, when your sample size is at least 30, you're going to be looking at an approximately normal distribution.
So MRH employees have spoken during the 2023 school year by selecting the district teacher of the year and support staff members of the year for each building. And so I'd like to start by just recognizing each building, having those individuals come up for teacher of the year and support staff member of the year. So I will read a little snippet about each person for them to come up, and then we'll make sure that we recognize not only them, but their family as well. At the Early Childhood Center, our kindergarten teacher, Christina Stoberink, accepted. Christina accepted the Early Childhood Center Teacher of the Year honor. So please congratulate her, and I'd like to be able to have the board president also take a picture with her. Christina, we have some. Thank you very much. And then also from the Early Childhood Center, we have Peggy Russell. So if you've ever been in the Early Childhood Center, you know that Peggy Russell actually co-runs the school office, and she was selected as the Support Staff Member of the Year. Now to the elementary building. In the elementary school building, Maplewood Richmond Heights Elementary, the School Support Staff Member of the Year category, we recognize our gregarious head custodian, Ernest Jones, who took the top honors for the Support Staff Member of the Year. And I'd also like to say, if you have people who are with you today, we invited everyone to bring whoever they wanted to bring to also celebrate in that recognition. Then I'd love for you to be able to take a photo with your family as well. And Ernest also, as you see by the video, won the District Support Staff Member of the Year as well. Not only was he selected at the building, but went through a pretty rigorous process to be also honored at the district level as well. So. Ernest, is this your lovely wife?
Lovely wife, please stand.
Thank you for sharing them with us. Right. Okay, also at the elementary school, we really enjoyed the submission for our veteran teacher, Gage Dotson. He was tapped as the elementary school principal, sorry, Miss Elam, I'm sorry, the school teacher of the year, and his principal is also here to celebrate us. Gage, I'm promoting you. Oh. They are so cute. Yes. Now at the middle school, the honors went to a pair of employees who both arrived in MRH at the same year, 2008. So the Teacher of the Year award went to Communications Arts instructor Chris Smith. And again, if you have family members, please make sure that they get a photo op as well. Thank you, thank you. And our Support Staff of the Year was bestowed on a very surprised and humble counselor, Miss Terry Brown.
All right, you know.
When I got her, she said, I'm glad I got my hair done. So for the high school, wow, it's not a lot you can say about this person in one sentence, but just 1 week after earning his doctorate, high school math teacher and our running coach, Dr. Ryan Rizzuto was recognized for Teacher of the Year for the building, and also went through a very rigorous process to be selected as the District Teacher of the Year, and will go on to be nominated for Regional and State Teacher of the Year. Also, our longtime head custodian, Janice Pyatt, was voted as our support staff member of the year, and she is more like family to MRH, and also brought her family with her to celebrate in her recognition tonight. So Janice, we love Can we get a picture with Jenna's family? Yeah. Casey, you want to get in?
No, I got one. Thank you. I'm not a gift girl.
And last but not least, I don't see him here in our audience, but I definitely want to recognize employees that were not directly tied to any grade level school or building were also had an opportunity to vote for the support staff member of the year. And that honor went to our Mr. Fix-It instructional technology teacher, Chris Baker. So our heartiest congratulations go to everyone who was nominated. We will continue to celebrate all of our employees next week at the employee recognition 1 week from today. So be prepared for more pampering. We love you guys.
Thank you, Dr. Ambers Phillips, and I think I speak for the entire board when I say it is an honor to serve each and every one of you. You do incredible work for our kids and for our community, and we can't thank you enough for that. All right, we'll now move on to public forum. Do we have any speakers for public forum?
We have several this evening.
Wonderful. And I would point you to our guidelines for speaking. Our first speaker, Nicole Rainey, if you'd like to take the podium.
Do I go here?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first, congratulations to all the awesome teachers and support staff of the year. It was really special to get to see this, and congratulations to all our new board members and new board leaders. I want to just briefly say, from my heart and on behalf of myself and my family, thank you to the school board and the school leadership for passing such a powerful and comprehensive LGBTQ resolution for our school district. When I read it, I was expecting it to say, oh, we value everyone, it's a hooray for diversity. But when I got into the meat of it, I saw that it was real. It was making some bold decisions for our district, and I'm grateful. So thank you.
Our next public commenter, Gina LaRose.
Oh, this is a fun board meeting to feel compelled to speak. So I'm so glad that I got to see everybody get recognized. So I wrote my thoughts down because I have to keep myself in check. I'm sure that we can all agree that the primary goal of a public school district is to provide all students with a sound education. And one of the things that we know about our brains is that without first satisfying basic needs, learning becomes a lot more difficult, if not impossible. A sense of safety is probably one of the most important of those basic needs, and in the absence of that, our executive functioning has a really hard time operating. It's my belief that by passing the resolution that was passed at last month's Board of Education meeting, affirming and protecting LGBT students and staff and allowing them to feel comfortable and supported in a real way by and expressing their authentic identities, this board and this administration have taken an important step towards providing that sense of safety to all of our students. I know that many students and families right now are feeling a lot of anxiety and fear as our state legislators seem more determined than ever to intimidate, further marginalize, and actively harm people who don't gender conform or people who are not cisgender. It's my hope that this resolution will be considered in all future decisions and that it will serve to provide some peace to those individuals and families who are hurting so much right now. I'm truly grateful for your advocacy for those who've been historically marginalized and suppressed. I'm grateful for the resolution and that it acknowledges the harm that is caused by systemic exclusion and attempted erasure of LGBTQ students and staff. I'm grateful for the bold language, and I'm hopeful that my children will feel safe to express their authentic selves as they grow and mature, and that they'll also learn that it is unacceptable to shame, exclude, or bully another person based solely on their identity. I want them to know that strong communities accept and protect all sorts of people. I want to thank you for thoughtfully creating this resolution and to let you know that I'm sure it will not only serve this district but also the community at large. So, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, the Honorable Nikylin Knapper.
Oh, thank you. Hey, y'all. So this is beautiful. I get to make comments about the work that this board is doing, this district is doing, and then also give thanks and gratitude to the support staff and the teachers and the principals that are also carrying out this work. So to the board, thank you, because we are in difficult times right now. We are in times where our babies are under attack. Yeah. And I appreciate you all standing firm and strong and saying to our state and our state officials, you all can do whatever you want, but at the end of the day, we are focused on the child. And we are focused on making sure that that child is comfortable in the classroom so they can learn and not be distracted by hateful comments or bullying because of who they are. It's tough to stand up to the state and say we care for our children. Thank you. I will also say that this resolution is awesome, but I want it known that you all have been doing this work for years before that we've reached this time of chaos. We have a trans policy on the books right now. Thank you for that. Thank you for always thinking of all of our babies. Thank you to the support staff and the teachers, the principals that always think of our babies. Thank you for understanding that our students are really here to learn and get the best education that they can. And the only way that they're going to do that is for them to come as who they are and for you all to be accepting of that. It's amazing in this day and age how we take that for granted, that people will be accepting of a child. And it's also difficult for you all because of what we're seeing in our government. Thank you for loving our babies, for loving education, and wanting to be the best for our children. So, thank you all.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Eleanor Pardini.
Hi. I hate to be the one to follow Mayor Knapper. I am a parent in the district. I have kiddos in 2 schools, and this district's commitment to equity was one of the things that drew me to the district, and I'm grateful for your commitment to it at all levels. And so I also wanted to thank you for passing the resolution when you did, and with such bold language. And thank you for expressing your commitment to support the safety, the right to a safe place to learn, the humanity, the health and physical and social and emotional well-being of our kids, and also our teachers and staff people that work in the district. I want my kids and our family to be in a district that is unwavering and unapologetic about its commitment to equity and safety and inclusion and belonging for all kids and staff and teachers and family members. So thank you very much for your work.
Thank you. We appreciate all of our community members sharing their thoughts with us, coming out on an evening when we know you can be other places. So thank you for showing up and sharing your perspectives with us. We appreciate that. We'll now move on to item 2.01, approval of the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I think
Motion
we have some abstentions.
Thank you. All right, motion carries.
We're in favor.
All in favor? Yes. Okay. We'll move on to item 3.01, and study items, construction change orders.
Good evening, everyone. I'm presenting change order 31 this evening, which includes some additional railings at our ADA ramps outside the storm shelter, some concrete work down by the track, down by the concession stand that we felt would be a better transition than the asphalt that was originally planned, some additional drywall work on the west stack restrooms, soil remediation, and some asbestos removal that we found when we opened up some of the walls down in the Fine Arts Flex space and also on the first floor of the west stack restrooms. The budget impact to that is $65,170.27. Any questions?
Okay. No questions. We'll move on to item 3.02, E-rate contracts.
Okay, I will defer to our district IT manager, James Gardner, to present the summary of our E-rate contracts that we will be awarding for the fiscal funding year.
If any of our other guests wanted to leave, feel free.
We won't be offended.
E-rate's a rather dry topic. It was introduced last month as a study item, so I won't drag you through the weeds too much, but the gist of it is the Category 1 information is the services brings internet to the buildings and connects the buildings together. The Category 2 services are typically the equipment in the buildings, the wireless access points, the network switches at the edge and at the core. We use both sets of funds. Primarily this year, our Category 2 funds were attached to 2 sets of things, the edge switches at the perimeter, if you will, in all of our edge closets, not necessarily in our cores and our main closets. We kind of replace these, if you will, in a staggered cycle to make sure that we're not getting everything in one year. E-rate comes in kind of a 5-year funding cycle, so it pays to kind of stagger these across years. We successfully solicited bids on equipment that will replace equipment that's been in place since 2016. The major piece for us, and the big victory for us, if you will, was we had a kind of a late entry this year into the field, which was the addition of our new central office, which was disclosed to me literally on the federal program's filing deadline day. Yeah. Thankfully, Chris mentioned that to me on the afternoon so we could add the facility and the address into our federal programs filing. And we were able to get the vendors, 3 of which already had fiber optics at least laid to our facilities, to actually bid in and, if you will, agree to not only build out that facility, but continue our other facilities and run 1-year only contracts to the facilities that we're likely to be divesting ourselves of in a year, which is a little bit abnormal. Normally they like to build out every facility for a fixture set of contracts. So everybody wants either all 1-year contracts, all 5-year contracts, all 3-year contracts. In this case, we have a set of 5-year contracts for the facilities that we're keeping for 5 years, and we have 2 1-year contracts for the facilities that we're ridding ourselves, which is a big cost advantage. And the fact that we actually renewed with our existing fiber provider in this case saved us a bunch more money because we're not really basically spending any money on construction. So it's a big bonus for us. And we're getting all new network gear at the edge to power it too as part of the deal. It's a win-win for us. And the fact that we did it at the deadline is even more impressive still. So I was very satisfied with the arrangement we got there, and the price on our edge switches is, you know, we were very happy there. We've been very satisfied with the performance of the equipment we've had in place, and we basically renewed with a newer model of the same equipment at actually less of a price than we paid 7 years ago. So, and the other part of the Category 2 bid is essentially maintenance and wireless controller prices. So that's the long and the short of it. The rest of it's kind of in there from a cost perspective, year-to-year budget. Were there any questions on any part of it, or on E-rate in general?
Thank you very much. We are voting on this.
Yes, it is an action item later.
Thank you for all the work you put into it, too.
It was an interesting spring break, because that's when the actual deadline was.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. All right, item 3.03 are summer temporary workers.
So I'm representing 3.03. So each year during the summer, our building and grounds and our technology department, they basically enlist additional help to manage the large volume of work that we have that needs to be completed over the summer. And so these positions typically provide an opportunity for our students to gain some really valuable skills as summer interns. And so if you think about our high school metaphor, school as apprenticeships, it really is incorporating the goals of students with the cornerstones essential to growth and development as strong citizens. So this provides not only an opportunity for our students, but B&G also provides opportunities for our 9-month employees to also have temporary summer help as well. And then the technology and B&G department will fill these positions and bring the individuals forward at a subsequent meeting. So today we're just really looking to approve the hiring of these positions, and we will bring them forward later on. The positions will be not to exceed 5 B&G interns, 2 for the gardens interns, and then 6 for the tech department. And these are part-time positions, about $15 an hour, a max of 20 hours per week. What questions might I be able to answer for you?
Do these positions require students to have a worker's permit?
Some of them will be able to work under a worker's permit, but most of them will probably be 16. We will not require it.
Is there going to be any insurance concerns for having kids operating equipment?
No, we've had these positions before, and so it provides opportunities for them to work in MRH the same way they might work in the community. So We're very careful about what we ask them to do as well.
All right. If no further questions, thank you. We'll move on to item 3.04, our assessment plan with Rachel Ward.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Try hear this again. Chris, you might have to do this for me again. Oh, hold on. All right. Good evening. My name is Rachel Ward. I'm the District Coordinator of Assessment, Data, and Accountability, and I'm here this evening to discuss our 23-24 assessment plan. We do this annually. The board reviews and adopts the assessment plan. So a couple things, I'll start out with the changes for the assessment plan. So this is just a couple highlights. The full plan is attached in the board agenda. We removed this year a couple screeners that we no longer use, and we no longer use those because we have NWEA, and we can rely on that data, and we don't have to supplement with these other outside assessments. Same rationale for why we removed our optional EOCs. So the EOC is an end-of-course exam from DESE. We are required to administer 4 of those. We used to administer more than that. English 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 we had added so that we could have more of a continuum of data on our students. But now that we have NWEA and we have national norms and we have benchmark data, we didn't need to do the additional assessment for the optional EOCs. With the exception of Algebra 2 for students that take Algebra 1 in 8th grade, we do have to give them Algebra 2 in high school, and we know who they are and we will administer that. We just will no longer do a universal administration of those. Fundus and Bunnell was our reading assessment that we administered, and that is no longer going to be a required universal assessment. We will be using that as an optional tool for teachers that want to continue that, but through our letters training and through some research through the foundations of reading, that is no longer the assessment that we will be using for everyone, universal. We also added our assessments, our preschool assessments to our calendar. Thank you to our new federal programs coordinator. We called that out and was like, can we get those on there so we can make sure we do that with fidelity? I was like, good call. So we added our preschool assessments to the grid and to the plan. And then we also went through and added all of some surveys that we've been doing, the DESE climate survey that is now required, and our social emotional screener that we will be implementing in grades K through 12. So this is our matrix that is impossible to read here, but it's in the plan, as you can see. And each of these little things, little shortcuts, have a definition in the table below that describe what they are, why we give them, what that stands for, and how often we give those. So you can see we've got some assessments spread out across all of the grade levels there. And then this is just sort of a way for me to visualize or to show you kind of what assessments we give, why we give them. So along the bottom here, we have these kind of individualized, getting to know about our kids, what they know. We use these for diagnostic and instructional levels. So that's what some of these assessments are in the green band. And then you go up to kind of this predictive or for accountability purposes. And we use that to kind of get some groups, to figure out some different categories and levels of our students. We also do some of these because we are required to meet laws. And then up at the top, those are those kind of like ACT, AP that are kind of those gatekeepers and determine for our kids those next steps, and we can use that. And we use some of those results to look at our curriculum and those big buckets. These are a little bit more student-centered down here, so, and instructional-centered. Questions for me about our assessment plan? I see one brewing over there.
Yeah,
yes.
And I know you're probably not the right person to field this, but it's your presentation. So the continuation of Fontes and Pinnell's when it is not in alignment with the letters training in the new literacy curriculum gives me some concern. For what purpose would a teacher want to give an additional assessment that is not necessarily aligned to the curriculum that they're teaching?
That is a fantastic question. I do know that some of when I asked that question, like, we're keeping it as an optional tool. I think right now it's sort of still kind of being phased out from some of that. And I know we have not 100% of our teachers are letters trained. And so some of them, I think we're phasing it out is my understanding. We're definitely not administering it to everyone. I think it is, I know like a lot of our reading books and things are still leveled using that. And so I think we're just still phasing out Fontes and Pinnell. But again, I don't know
I know
exactly. That was the information I have.
You can answer directly, right? But
I would also add, for students, as we build out our tiered systems of support, if we find that the assessments, like if we give STAR at the elementary level and we find that there are some gaps, there are some instructional pieces in Fontes and Pinnell. But I think one of the changes also lies within the State Department with the shift, because currently they are doing research to determine if Fontes and Pinnell is the best tool to determine students' readiness around literacy. And so we were supposed to have the list of pre-approved assessments. We have not yet received those. I am a member of the district's the State's Department's Literacy Commission, and so I am not yet in receipt. The concern right now, we've talked about this as a team, is that once that list is released, not only for the assessment for literacy, but also from a curricular standpoint, if our curriculum, any programs that support, or any assessment tools are not on the list, the district is required to purchase something from the list, and if we purchase something from the list that's considered pre-approved, they will reimburse us funds back. Well, currently we're in the budgeting season, so if we're talking about purchasing and having the ability to provide professional development for staff, that will also be a challenge for us as a district. So right now we see the need to be used for students who may, on a particular assessment, need some additional data to be collected, but that's also part of what we're using for our multi-tiered systems of support.
Any other questions?
There's no additional questions. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome. Let me get out of here.
Move on to item 3.05, our academic calendar proposal for 2024-2025.
Yes, good evening, board. Happy to bring you the 2024-2025 proposed calendar. The calendar committee went through a long process, was ready to bring you a wonderful, gorgeous calendar, and then we got hit with a little bit of a curveball. The Board of Elections is still requesting us to use MRHE for presidential elections, and we had to pivot a little bit. One of the things that we want to make sure is that if we have that place as a polling center, that we are in some way, shape, or form not in session on that day. So we've made some adjustments to our calendar and moved some of our professional development days around to better meet those needs. So before you have the attached to the calendar timeline, which are the events that took place to bring this calendar to you. And then you have the updated, you'll notice it says draft B, because draft A did not have this curveball given to us. So we were able to bring you an updated draft here once that got resolved through an additional calendar committee meeting with about 5 different bad options. And this is the best option that we landed on moving forward. Any questions about the 24-25 calendar?
Just want to throw in an added piece from my newly appointed legislative committee that I'm also on. There's a piece of legislature coming through that potentially will create conflict. We have moved from days to hours, and so now there's a piece of legislature that's saying that potentially we have to go back to 174 days. So we will keep the board and community updated on the shifts. If that is to occur, we will have to bring this calendar back to the board for additional modifications.
Chris and the calendar committee, I just wanted to make everyone aware the day after Halloween is now a teacher work day, and we finish the semester before the winter break. Much thanks. Very much thanks. Oh, and hold on. And, wait a minute. Yes, we end the school year before June. I got some happy people.
That's right.
Thank you.
We know that was not an easy task. I'm curious, is there an opportunity for us to appeal to the Board of Elections about this decision?
There's always an opportunity to appeal. I cannot guarantee that it will be accepted at this time, but we are going to encourage some of that, and any information that the board's willing to provide, we'll gladly submit on your behalf to the Board of Elections.
If we're able to provide an alternative location, would that be a sufficient option to provide when we are present?
I will take all variables to our opportunity there. See what we can do.
It is interesting, while we remind the community that now St. Louis County has open voting, where anyone can vote in any polling location, that they seem to be so insistent that a school building tucked away in a residential neighborhood is absolutely essential to the presidential election. Very curious.
That's just good.
But thank you for all your hard work.
Absolutely. Yes, there are a lot of variables, and we did the best we could. And while I'm certain it's not perfect, it is getting closer, and we'll continue this hard work and dedication.
We appreciate that. We will continue to explore our options with the Board of Elections. Item 3.06, our support staff recommendation.
See if I can get pulled up here. Good evening again. Our support staff salary recommendations for the 2024 school year. So this is a huge investment in our team and in our staff, and so we're really excited about being able to present this, and it's certainly well deserved. We know that these positions are vital to the operations of our school district, and wanted to kind of paint a picture for you of how we actually arrived at the place where we are. So the problem is that we really had no salary schedule for our support staff. And that is one of the things that was requested. It was an ask of our support staff members. It was an ask of our superintendent. It was an ask of our office, finance, you name it. It was something that we really wanted to have and put in place. And so the employees were really unsure about what their increases were from year to year. And so it was really difficult for them to gauge what their raises and their increases would be. From a finance standpoint, it was really difficult to plan a budget, not only for the employee, but for the school district as well, to project out what those expenditures would be from year to year. And it also led to some inherent inequities. When you don't necessarily have anything written down or codified, then naturally, even with the best intentions, inequities do exist. And there were no caps or limits. And so you can see some of the things that were flaws or challenges, if you will, with having no salary schedule in place. The solution was to develop a support staff wage or salary schedule, and to also place our nurses and social workers on the teacher salary schedule, the certified salary schedule, which is what you would see throughout St. Louis County and most of our neighboring school districts. Our nurses and our social workers are on that salary scale. So it's in alignment with what we see our competitors and also other school districts doing. I just have to pause for a minute and do a huge shout out to Chris Holzer and Dr. Benita Jameson as well. I know that they have spent countless hours trying to figure this out. This has been a constant conversation throughout the year, something we have been actively working to try to put in place. And so I know I say this not only for myself, but for our entire team, that everyone is really excited about being able to present this tonight. Methodology. So what did we do? How did we get here? We compiled salary and wage data provided by the regional school districts. And so all the school districts provide this information to Education Plus. It was aggregated, and we looked at our competitors for the most part to analyze the available data and to put it into 5 different categories. We also adjusted the starting wage of our MRH positions based on the average, again, of those closest competitors, where we see individuals leaving when they actually do exit our system, tracking to see what districts are they actually going to, and doing a comparison specifically for that. And then we created a salary schedule for each grouping of positions based on the adjusted starting salaries. And then we placed our employees in those respective schedules to achieve an increase. And in most cases, this provided an increase from either 7 to 10%. So this was really a difference that they could feel, right? So the outcomes, we become more competitive with our wages for each support staff position. And so this is not only helping us to retain the individuals that we have, but it's also recruiting too. That allows and attracts other people to come to MRH. The salary schedule for each position, again, is something that we did not have before, so it certainly helps individuals to see where they will actually matriculate along the continuum, and it is predictable and adjustable. So future-proof. We're able to plan accordingly because of this. The budget impact, it increases our support staff budget by $208,000 over FY23. It's an 8.8 increase overall, and you'll see that the total support budget projection is about 2.6. And then this is the operating funds slide. It's very small. It's no way to really get that larger, but we wanted to make sure that we presented this as well so you could see the actuals, the budget, and then also the projections for not only the previous years, but the 23-24 school year and the projection moving forward. So, what questions might I or Chris Hoser be able to answer for you?
Quick. Thank you. I think this is long overdue and absolutely more than just appropriate. It's amazing. I'm flummoxed a little, Chris, by the surplus deficit on the chart. So if you want to talk about that, that'd be great. I'm hoping that by keeping those in our system, that somehow it offsets expense somewhere else. And could we speak to that? That having people stay and work for us builds something that can then give us savings that I'd love to hear about.
The biggest investment we make as a school district is in our human resource. I will say that we are typically able to, if not break even, almost break even on the ins and the outs year over year. I'm not sure what that looks like in this coming year. We're giving large increases to our certified teacher salary schedule, as well as large increases to the support staff new salary schedules. And we're doing that because we have to remain competitive. The exit door has been wide open. A fair comparison is to say someone could walk out the door and make more money working at McDonald's. Of course, money's not the only factor. We have to factor in our benefits package and the leave package that goes along to make the total compensation package for our employees, and that's a huge, huge benefit. And there's also that intangible aspect of MRH that causes people to just want to be here. But when economic times get to the point that they are now, sometimes that's just not enough. I'd like to say that we're going to break even on this, but we are planning to spend down the fund balance again into the next fiscal year. Here's some bright sides to that. That's not always a negative thing. It's a typical arc of local funding for a school district is to pass a levy, ride that levy out as far as we can while it's meeting the needs of the school district, and at the point that it no longer does meet the financial needs of the school district, come back for another one. The last one was 2016. So you can see that we were able to increase our overall operating fund balance to right around 53%, which is borderline too high. And we have to spend that down, not just for the betterment of our district and our employees, but also due to SIP 6 and some of the things that they're requiring of us on the financial side. So one other bright spot is I do believe some things I'll talk about later when I do the budget presentation, that we have some items in our 23 budget that are potentially overstated that we're investigating, so that's always great. I think that in spite of that, or along with that, we'll still outperform the budget, so I expect that that ending fund balance, when I bring the final budget amendment at the end of June, will be a different number than the one you see, and I'm projecting it to be higher, which will make the starting fund balance for fiscal 24 higher, which will change all the numbers moving forward. So the budget is far from done, and I'll talk about that more in a few minutes. But these are the numbers we have right now, and I'm more confident in the salary and benefits numbers than I've been. So I'm fairly certain that the budget can absorb this, but we do see what happens in the future as a result of this. Also, look at the revenue line for 25, 26, and 27. Notice how they don't change. So the board asks me, as you well know, to budget flat. So this is what that looks like. This is the worst case scenario, as expenses continue to rise and revenues remain flat.
I appreciate the reminder that the surplus deficit does not mean we are going below zero.
Correct.
It
Look at the percent at the bottom.
Going into our fund balance.
Yes.
Because when I first looked at it, I thought, oh my gosh, and that's not what that means. So that is, I'm well aware that we are spending down our fund balance a little bit in a very good place, but those negative numbers are not because we are in debt.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Can I also add, I think we mentioned before finding ways to bring money into the district. So the addition of the federal programs position has allowed us to actually write grants and be awarded grants. So the benefit of having individuals to do the work and identify places where we can bring funds in is value add. So for example, when we think about the addition of a social worker at the elementary school, which really aligns to the data that we've been seeing from families and also from the screeners that Rachel Ward presented as a part of the assessment plan, says that's a need, but the district is not necessarily making the expenditure for it. So we will be partnering with the Children's Service Fund. So we are looking at ways to bring in money. The other piece that is not necessarily highlighted there is that the State Department also provided ESSER funds. And so while you look at the funds that are there, we have been seeing a larger increase as a result of the funds that we've had as a result of the pandemic. And so we are taking a very fiscally sound approach. Chris will tell you. We look at previous year's expenditures and for what funds are being spent on, and also tying it back to now, since we have the large portion of our strategic plan completed and thinking about priorities for next year, how does this support priorities and the bottom line for outcomes? And then thinking strategically about how do we begin to address where we are and what that looks like in the future. But I will say, from the standpoint of looking at our teaching corps, when we have staff members who leave or retire and they are making an excess, and when we bring in new staff, we do see some cost savings there. So we are looking at that in addition to ways to bring in additional funds into the district through partnerships.
We appreciate your work to standardize this scenario because that does build predictability into the budget, which helps us manage that more appropriately. So thank you for all the work you've done, Dr. Ambers Phillips,
Happy to do it.
Bring this up to something that is competitive and predictable.
Yeah, thank you for the good work. And Chris, thank you for mentioning that it's not just about the salary, but the whole benefit, the whole package. I think the community, the board, and everyone needs to hear that it's actually a whole package when you're trying to get good talent in. So thank you for mentioning that.
Very welcome.
Okay. Item 3.07, administrator recommendation.
So on the heels of the support staff recommendation, I'm going to also discuss our administrative recommendation. So in the past, the recommendation has often been based off of the increases for our teachers and also our support staff. And so in the 2023-24 school year, we adjusted this approach. We made some efforts to really look at the district's equity policy as a means to provide support staff members more equitable and living wages, and also increase increases in comparison to the support staff and the certified staff increases, excuse me. So the recommendations is significantly less than it has been in the past as it relates to both our teachers and then also our support staff. This year we are bringing a 4.5% increase for administrators to be presented to the board for approval. This actually impacts our budget for the FY24 by 1.5 million. It's an increase of $89,665 over FY23. So those salaries are adjusted for each administrator, and you'll see that information later on in the executive session. What questions might we have?
Thank you.
Just wanting to reinforce that while 4.5% increase is not at the level that we were able to do for certified staff, it is significant, and we recognize, there may be folks in the community who look at that and think that, wow, I would really love to have access to that kind of raise. So again, it is an inadequate token of our appreciation for the work that our administrators are doing, and I think appropriate in these times. So yeah, I just wanted to say that too.
Yes, it is an increase, and certainly each administrator will have an increase. And I also think, to your point, also the piece of just making sure equity for the majority of our staff members as well was really highlighted and it was emphasized here. And so I definitely feel like when I have conversations with administrators, they understand the rationale and the why behind it as well.
Are there any positions that do not fall now within some sort of schedule, or have you codified all of that? Have we officially, is everybody fit into one of these schedules?
Yes. I'm scanning the memory.
Yeah, I'm scanning it.
Yes. Because we've done support staff, we've done teachers. Administrators aren't on a schedule.
Yeah.
So let me.
So that's the
That's
only.
true.
So
Okay.
that's
But we've covered everybody. Got it.
Yes, we've covered
Thank you for
support
that.
staff, every position, and certified staff, every position. Not necessarily administrators because they're not on a salary schedule.
And the extra duty
Contracts. Okay.
though, that was adjusted last year or the year before. So yeah, we're getting through them.
Great question, though.
Nice.
Thank you for your work and making us a more equitable employer. We appreciate that. Okay. 3.08, Career Ladder with Dr. Bouchard.
Just in case I forget. Good evening. Thank you so much. We are coming to you this evening with a request. One of our board policies states that if we look to apply for grant funds, that any grant funds that require any kind of substantial in-kind or financial match, that we have board approval before we even hit the apply button. So we are here this evening. One of the grants that we are looking at is called Career Ladder. It's part of a state statute that has been established. I can't even tell you how long ago, because it's kind of been out there for as long as I've been in education, which is pretty long. So, so it is a 60-40 match, meaning the grant funds would provide 60% of the funding, and the district would need to provide 40% of a local match. Some of the highlights about Career Ladder: it's basically a performance pay matching program that a teacher would develop a plan, and administrators approve that plan based on specific activities that are listed. And then once those are approved, the teachers would basically do what's considered volunteer hours. It has 3 different stages, and you have to qualify as a teacher for each stage. As you can see in the chart that's listed in there, for either 50 hours, 75 hours, or 100 hours, depending on what stage you're in. And then there's the reimbursement amount for those hours being done. There also attaches a list of allowable and non-allowable activities. There are certainly some things that the grant would not allow for teachers to do, but there's also quite a few activities that do allow for it. It does not allow us to basically what's called supplant, which means if we're already paying somebody to do something, we can't put that in there and then use the grant funds to pay them for that, because we already do that. So this would be for things that maybe some of our teachers do and activities that our teachers would be able to do that they maybe don't get paid for.
Can you give some examples of what that might look like? Because reading through this list, I was like, well, we have, extra duty for, many of the allowable activities that are listed.
Most of what I've seen in the past have to do with teachers doing tutoring, additional tutoring that wouldn't be necessarily provided for by the district. So they could tutor a student for that number of hours. They have all 3 stages. They have to have at least one activity, so they can do other activities as well. They could offer, an ACT or SAT prep course that we don't necessarily pay for. And I'm not fully familiar. We haven't made it all the way through the list. We are still working on drafting the application and making sure that the things that are in there are not things we currently pay for. So we have been going through that list. Dr. Ambers Phillips, as well as Dr. McGee's learning team, and myself have been kind of scouring through things to make sure that the application is sufficient.
So
Does that answer your question?
I have an example.
Yeah.
So for example, we're rolling out Canvas, and we need individuals in each building to serve as
ambassadors.
There we go. And so if we decide to do that, typically we would have to pay 100% of that stipend. We would be able to use portions of that money to provide the pay for the staff members, or Dr. Ambers Phillips is interested in having equity action teams at buildings. Once we roll out our diversity, equity, inclusion training next year, that will cover that as well. One of the things that was stated on our commissioner's call is that we can submit that we plan to apply, but if we decide that we don't want to, there is no penalty for that, but to have it approved if we so decide to do so, because I think the deadline is April 30th.
And it's not going to put an undue burden on our back office to manage the documentation of this.
That generally will fall to me, unless I'm mistaken. That generally falls to me. And so dealing with compliance, this is actually something that is in one of the state's compliance, and it's called EPEG's management system. So it's something that I live and breathe in. It's just a management function, so it's running reports, and teachers would have to submit documentation. It's not just a blind faith that you did your stuff. So principals would have to approve their plans prior to even them being allowable. HR would have to see something to make sure that they are falling within the correct stage. So there's still some back-end work to be done, even beyond that, just even financially looking at the impact of how many teachers we may have and what that would look like financially. Again, we can't do anything if you don't approve for us to apply for it. And like Dr. Jameson mentioned, that we can always apply or decide later on that no, this isn't going to work for us, and say no thank you. So we're just looking to make sure we have at least an opportunity to see what's in there.
Is that board policy one that we should revisit related to like accepting grants?
I think that there are
applying?
probably some options out there that we may come back to with a proposal for a modification to that policy DB. Just that maybe not in all cases, but in some cases there are some state and federal grants that we would look to apply for that may be beneficial to the district, that especially in short timelines we may want to apply for, but maybe still need approval to the board in order to accept it. And maybe it's a slightly different way to state it. But I am not a lawyer, so I would also think that has to go through a couple of other places as well to make sure that it's copacetic.
Yeah, I'm aware that there are governing boards that have to approve, except taking receipt of grant funds, and this has come up historically as a challenge even before your position was in place. So.
I can imagine that. Okay.
We look forward to receiving that recommendation for how we might make this a less onerous process for our administrators to pursue
Okay.
grant funding.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, 3.09, Policy Batch 2023A.
All right, we have 6 policies, and I do want to say up front, if you notice with the outline of the policies, we are asking for additional time to study, but wanted to give the board an opportunity to review them, to offer feedback or suggestions for changes. So I'll go through a couple. You'll hear me link a few of these together because there are some pieces that are interconnected that will make sense once I go through. So just a quick overview, Board Policy BDDB around agendas. So M6 has made quite a few changes in regards to what boards can and cannot do, interestingly. And one is that an individual board member cannot request to put an item on the agenda. It has to be the will of the total board. I will say that I have not seen this to be a challenge for us as a board, but it also allows the board to vote on an item to be removed if the collective board is not in agreement to the item being placed. This is an item that we are continuing to look at. Again, it's not a concern for us per se, but we are looking collectively across the region to finalize some language that will be similar in approach. So I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions about this particular item, but it will come back for a second read and presentation form for adjustments. So the next 2 policies I'm actually going to group together, and I'll explain why. So policy BDDH and also policy KC are closely aligned. So the first one for BDDH is public participation in board meetings. We currently have public comments, 3 minutes, provided the board typically does not respond to those particular comments. Usually a member of the superintendent's cabinet will respond to that in writing. This particular policy is couched and has 2 versions. One is whether we want to continue to offer public comment because policy KC allows residents to add agenda items to the board's agenda. And so the challenge with that is that you have to designate the number of agenda items you would like to add, as well as look at some language with capping the amount of time that is added. And so currently right now there is not a lot of definition, and it also changes how those items are added. So typically when we have residents or citizens, they don't have to be, for public comments, they don't have to be residents. You have to state your name, your address, which we typically don't do, but under the policy for KC, which would be something that we would bring back for modification because of confidentiality and of course everything else that's going on societally, the recommendation from the superintendent's group in the presentation is that we actually have individuals who come forth for public comments to say whether they're a resident or a non-resident and not actually indicate their address. A couple of their other changes that they are recommending for policy KC is to ensure that there is collaboration through the district's administrative team before an item actually gets to the board. And so the idea that we discussed for changes in this particular policy is to allow residents to meet with the superintendent and a member or a member of their cabinet, and then you have 20 days to do that, and after that meeting, if you don't seek resolution, the resident can ask, and you have 5 days to actually put the item on the agenda versus having individuals to contact the board secretary and say, add this item to the agenda. We also are thinking about adding language, and I apologize, this information was just new as of my superintendent's meeting yesterday, but part of that also includes adding language that any item that has already been presented in the last 3 months not be presented again. So the example that we discussed would be if we were still making updates for the pandemic and we just did that a month before and someone wanted to bring that particular item forward and it's similar, that we would not bring that item forward. There are some other items that I plan to review with cabinet based on the conversation ensuring that residents are not able to put items on work sessions, in addition to ensuring that the information that's being provided is streamlined and not having a variety of people to present, but either the person who submitted the request and or an additional person. So the cap for the number of people to present will be 2 people. This one is actually getting a lot of traction in some of our neighboring 27 districts, just because of the volatility of their boards and the desire to actually want this in their community. Again, this is not necessarily a challenge in our district, but I would like to make some further adjustments to the recommended policy. The other part of this particular policy is around having a community engagement plan. So MSBA actually provided us a policy that did not necessarily have input. And so if we adopt this policy, which I'm not recommending as is, we would have to follow what MSBA has outlined regarding community engagement, which would mean before July 1, we would actually have to convene a committee, get input, and then develop a community engagement plan, which would actually have to come to the board each year and be approved each year. And so again, we plan to make some adjustments to this, but I wanted to provide that information regarding those 2 policies. Any questions before I move on to the others?
I have a statement.
Yes.
So I understand why it might gain traction in certain, talking about, what is it, BC?
BDDH,
yeah.
and then KC.
My concern, however, is that it almost hijacks the meeting. Obviously, we want to hear from our community. I would hope all other school boards want to do that. But a lot of our agendas are planned out quite a ways. There's information that we need to get in, that we need to review and evaluate. And my concern is that it would interfere with our ability to do that. And we have so many deadlines academically, you know, and some imposed by the legislature, some just to get things accomplished within the time frame that they need to be. Is there a time limit per se on some of these agenda items that can be imposed?
We would establish that. So during the conversation, we talked about continuity across policy. So currently, with public comments, we give 3 minutes. So technically, we could bring a revised policy back to say that anyone who wants to place an item on the agenda would actually get 3 minutes. But we also wanted to be fair to ensure that they had ample amount of time to bring the item forward and discuss what their concerns are. So the conversation that we're having as a superintendent group is 5 minutes, and then capping the number of agenda items, because to your point, if you allow even 5 minutes and you don't cap it at 10 with the other agenda items, you will have very long board meetings. And so that was something that we discussed. The other part of the conversation, which I don't necessarily agree with, would be to remove public comments altogether. So just like we had community members today expressing support of our resolution, they get those 3 minutes. By removing that, you would then increase the number of agenda items you would get. So once we finalize, I think the recommendation would be to continue with the public comments, which is one of the ones for policy BDDH. It's like either you do it or you don't. But my recommendation when we bring that forward would be to continue with our public comments, but then to limit and then place a time limit as board member Herndon Miller is suggesting.
I have one other question too. So would the community member proposing the agenda item have to present it?
They would be presenting the item.
Okay.
Can I piggyback
Is that
on that
vetted?
question? Can I piggyback on that question, Brandy?
Yes.
I'm concerned, I like the involvement part of the community, but doesn't it hijack the people who could actually answer the question? So currently, we are a 30,000 feet look, the board. So if I want to present something to the board, that means I've stepped over the teacher, the principal, the admin team, and gone straight to the board, where we may not be the best place to start.
So now you're talking about policy KL, which is how we resolve complaints or concerns in the district. And so that process is very clear. It does circumvent that process, and that was also part of the conversation that we had. But the other part, which I failed to mention, is that we also have to determine when we revise the policy whether or not we want to engage in discourse and dialogue with the individuals who are presenting the items. So there were 2 recommendations that came forward. Typically when we have public comment, there isn't a response, it's a thank you, so we could do that. The other recommendation is that a statement be made by the board president saying someone from administration will respond within 20 business days in regards to that. So it still allows the reciprocal communication and the opportunity for them to present, but it does remove the ability for a board member or somebody else, but it still gives them the opportunity to step over and bring the item directly to the board.
That definitely concerns me, especially because I want to make sure that we are addressing information that's accurate, information that, you know, has time to be investigated, things of that nature. I don't think that the place for that is a school board meeting. This is our community's opportunity to hear information that, you know, about the school district and its performance and hold us accountable for the things they've elected us to do. And I'm not sure that that is the appropriate arena for that. There is an arena for it, absolutely. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like, you know, so that, because again, we want our community to have that opportunity. I just also want to make sure that we're not putting our administrative team in a bind by having them now have to, you know, do something totally different in how they're presenting at the meetings.
I failed to mention we also have to document that engagement, and so that was something that I spoke with my executive assistant about, like how do we codify that? So if there is something presented, how do we demonstrate that we put it out to the public for them to give feedback on the policy? So it is a hot topic right now because it does make it very difficult to resolve any concerns or complaints that come forward, but you also can't control what those items are. And so we also talked about items that potentially could surface that are exec session items, and there is a caveat that if a person wants to bring, say, a student matter, which would typically be discussed in executive session, they could do that, and we would have to allow them to come and address that item and then excuse them out of the meeting because you couldn't talk about student matters in open session. So lots of work for my team and I to do to bring back a policy that we feel would allow our community to engage. And I do think that we have opportunities for that to occur, and we're continuing to explore other opportunities for people to have conversation and discourse with the board collectively. I do think that this puts us in a situation where certain items, because you don't get a chance to vet those items, they just submit the items and you're expected to put them on the agenda.
Oh, it wasn't a question. I mean, that would be completely unacceptable to just, you know, bring in anything involving staff or students or yeah, I mean, I can't see, I mean, if there's a workaround, fine, but I mean, my position would be no, absolutely not.
So the good news is that we'll be looking at these policies at least twice more before we approve them, right?
Yes.
So,
That's good. And the other policies are really just more or less convoluted. I'll quickly go through those. The virtual courses, the changes, students do not have to attend. We can deny, and initially we could deny, but DESE students or families could actually appeal to DESE. They've removed the ability for the virtual courses for the appeal. Our responsibility is that we have to provide any family that's interested in virtual courses the guidance and the link to how to enroll if they choose to do that. And the other virtual course that's coming forward is full-time virtual courses. And this actually was a heavy conversation in our cabinet meeting because we have students who are enrolled in virtual courses, but they are still our students. And so The challenge is we can't hold the virtual course individuals like MOCAP, or if a student decides to enroll in virtual courses through Mizzou, if a student does not successfully complete the course because they're enrolled with us, there is no level of accountability. So we're trying to work through and figure out what is the best way forward for the district. But it also, the other side of that is that if we have a student who is struggling academically and we don't want them enrolled, you can ask them to enroll, and then it's kind of like there's no accountability. So we want to ensure that we're examining this particular policy through the lens of equity, so much more work needed to unpack that one. And then policy JECA really is if we have individuals within our community who do not reside or own a home, if they have a business or agricultural land or something of that nature, and they pay up to $2,000 in taxes, they are able to enroll up to 4 students or children tuition free in the district. So those are the policies that will come back for review. We will make adjustments and tweaks, and I will continue to give updates. I did in the board note that I sent out today, I included the presentation from the attorney from our superintendent's meeting to give some additional context regarding the conversation that I shared.
Do we understand yet the impact of an open enrollment law on JECA? Would those things be concurrent, or would open enrollment supersede eligibility to enroll?
So I'm glad you asked that, because we also talked about the impact of students who are enrolled in the district for under McKinney-Vento or doubled up, and so they have not yet, DESE has not yet developed the criteria if open enrollment is to be approved through the legislature. So the challenge right now is that each district, if they accept external tuition, sets their own tuition. So MRH tuition rate may be very different from St. Louis Public's to Webster Groves. So if you're switching students and there is no set rate, if St. Louis Public's rate is lower than, say, MRH's, and we're flopping students, we could potentially be paying them less and we could be paying more. And so they have not worked out that piece. And so I don't have an answer to that yet. What I would say, and one of the things that I'm working with now, I met with both of our city managers for Richmond Heights and Maplewood, and that's going to be one of my joint topics that I join in with Mayor Thompson when he's at Breadco to talk to our community about the impact of open enrollment, even if we have residents who don't have kids in school, because you now open the door where we have a 3-mile radius district where it's more of a community school. You'll have individuals coming in, and so you can't dictate who those students are, and you're not getting additional funding. So there's some other pieces that are not yet being addressed around students who receive support from special school district, transportation costs that are a part of that, and so they haven't figured it out yet. So I'm looking forward to them doing it, because the impact for us as a community, because if you have individuals in the impact on student achievement data, because they have not changed how they fund, and so that was one of the items that I talked with our Congresswoman's liaison about, the funding formula and the goal of actually switching from weighted average daily attendance to that of enrollment, because there is an inequity because they are not providing transportation through open enrollment. So if you have a student who wants to come, say, from Riverview Gardens to attend in Maplewood, the parent is responsible for transporting. Well, the parent doesn't have a car. So if the student can't consistently come and we are getting paid based on their attendance, there really is a challenge there. So I think, there is a lot that the State Department needs to continue to work out, and unfortunately I don't have an answer to that question, but I will keep that at the top of mind.
Thank you. Lots to consider. We'll move on to item 4.01 under Admin Communications, our M6 update.
As always, I'm super excited we finally received the data back for the disaggregated data back from our climate and culture survey data, and I pulled out some important pieces, if it will load, that I think will be a benefit and also add to some of the information that we receive or you hear as board members. Let's see. Disregard my don't pay that any attention. Don't look at that. Chris, it's not working. Let's see, let's try this again.
It might be all stuff in your desktop.
Ha ha ha. I'm working on that. Will you give me my new computer? Let's see. So. Here we go. Hopefully. All right. So I want to start off before I jump into the why behind this. It's important for us to continue to analyze our climate and culture data because, as Chris alluded to earlier, we can increase salaries, but if the culture of the buildings are not sustaining people to stay, it's not going to make a huge difference. So just to give you an idea of the response rate, you will see results included for the older students. The older students are students in grades 6 through 12. We had 497 respondents. Of those respondents, 81 of those respondents identified as Black, 28 Hispanic, 55 multiracial, 281 identified as white, and 28 did not select to identify. The younger students, which would be grades 3 through 5, we had 332 respondents, and 13 identified as Indian or Alaskan Native, 29 Black, no Hispanic students, 22 multiracial, and 140 white students. And I'll explain why I'm sharing this information because it's critical that our community hear this. Our parent participation, we had 30 participants who identified as Black, we had 28 who identified as multiracial, and we had 385 respondents who identified as white, and 37 chose not to respond. And so I share that because it's critical when we send out surveys to ensure that we're hearing from all of our community that those individuals respond to the surveys because your voice matters. So just to kind of go back through what's here, this work is a part of MSIP 6, and it really allows us an opportunity to receive data from our students, our staff, and our families, and use that data to make decisions for adjustments. So I'm not going to read this. This was part of a previous slide that I presented, but we are to assure voices and then make decisions from the data collected. So the definitions here, I always like to point out that school climate and culture are typically used synonymously, but they are very different terms. School climate looks at the school's attitude, which are the behaviors and point of views that are displayed, and school culture are more about the personality of the building and those traditions or patterns of behaviors that are embedded within that space. So I included this slide around the 4 components of school culture and climate because they're critical. Safety is at the forefront of that, and we continue to talk about how not only do we keep our students physically safe, but also the psychological safety. So that's included the importance of relationships and students having a trusted adult within the school, and then teaching and learning and how that reinforces the social emotional piece, and also is a part of our resolutions that are moving forward when we talk about social emotional learning and thinking about students' decision making and their ability to emotionally regulate, and then also their self-awareness, not only about self but others. And then the environment, which will be a part of our strategic plan. How does our space and our design contribute to the learning space in the climate and culture? And then the idea of school improvement being continuous and using the data that's collected for changes. So it's a bit small, so I apologize. I did some screenshots to save myself some time, but I wanted to highlight from the student scales. And so there are several areas that were highlighted. It was critical situation responses, respect for students, school climate in general, self-efficacy, social skills, and teacher-student relationships. So students within our district, within the grade spans that were shared, were surveyed, and the scale is 1, either they strongly disagree, 2, they disagree, 3, they agree, and 4, they strongly agree. And so based on the student's perspective, it's very interesting that in the area of critical situation response, the students while statistically you can go both ways when you look at the standard deviation, but it's not a 3. And so 3 means that they agree. Anything beneath that say they disagree. So they're saying that they don't feel like the space that we provide and the critical situation responses, that we're not doing an effective job. The same is said for respect for students. And so when you look at the buildings, you see the high school and the middle school. When we get to the others, I'll kind of give the breakdown for that. I did not include the 3 through 5 in some of them because of the way they did the rating scales. You know, smaller kids, everything is wonderful, so you really couldn't see any variance in the gap in the data that was actually collected. So from the district level, the scale score was 2.89% for respect for students. So they do not see or think that students are respected, so that would be that they disagree. And then when you look at the middle school and the high school, the middle school actually had the lower scale score out of all of the schools. And then the other area, which is a clear opportunity, is work that we have to do around school climate based on the perception of students. So I'll keep in mind that these are student perceptions, and you will see the transition from families and staff to get an idea of where we are. So school climate at the middle school and the high school was rated as a 2.73%, against standard deviation plus or minus. But still, when I look at it, it's not a 3, which would be agree. So we have work to do around improving school climate based on the perception of students. Now, we do have some bright spots. The students indicated that they felt like they had great teacher-student relationships. So the middle school was at 3.08%, and then the high school was actually at 3.21%, which rounded us out for 3.17%. The staff surveys actually were very interesting. So there were more categories for them to respond to. So I'm actually going to work backwards, because there is a misconception around positive school community rooted in culture. So we hear often culture is poor, things are different, but the data actually says otherwise. And so when staff were surveyed, across the district, it was 3.33%. Now, again, it's not a 4, which is what I would like to see, because there's always opportunity for growth. But at the high school, the elementary building, and the middle school building, all of our staff say they agree that we have a positive school community and culture, which is contradictory of some of the information that we typically see in social media and hear in our conversations on the day-to-day. So I wanted to start there to just kind of put that information out. But there are some opportunities. So when you look at positive mindset and instructional design, we need to do some work at the middle school, because it is not at the 3 level, which is agree. Again, standard deviation plus or minus. It could be that, so maybe, you know, a staff member didn't have such a good day and decided to go in a different direction. We really can't plan for that. But right now, we're not where we would like to be. This is a piece that came out actually when we looked at the district aggregated data around consistent discipline procedures, and it came out in my my post checks that I do at one of the buildings. The teachers indicated that they wanted to see continuity across all of the buildings with some vertical alignment. But this is an opportunity for growth. And so the elementary school, out of all of the schools, actually was at a 2.68%. The staff did not believe that there were consistent handling of discipline. And then the middle school was at a 2.73%. The high school indicated that they agree that discipline is handled in a fair manner, which is interesting because another survey indicated something different. So, you know, looking at trends and not using this as one data point, it's important for us to triangulate the data points to see where there are patterns, and then also when we see those outliers. Collaboration and leadership, the high school had the highest scale score, and then the elementary and middle school, again, not at 3, which would be that they agree that collaboration and leadership exists, but with standard deviation, the elementary school was at 2.98% and the middle school was at 2.99%. Now, an area that actually showed up across all of our buildings is bullying. And so the scale score for the district was 2.75%. So that tells me the staff believes that bullying is an issue in our schools and we have work to do. So currently, K-8, we have the board approved curriculum for SEL for second steps. It does have a bullying component. I believe the elementary school has placed that as an item for ordering in our budget, and I'm not sure yet what we will do with the ECC, but all of the buildings, it was 2.83% for the middle school, elementary school 2.63%, and then the high school was 2.74%. So that's a spot that tells us when we begin to talk about how we use our funds and expenditures, how are we using that to support our buildings. So the addition to the social work of the elementary school is a result of some of the data here, and then also their SRSS screener that says that there's a need to support students who have internalized behaviors. And then the last one, which is shorter categories, is with the family survey results, which also is quite interesting because I look at the parallels. So our students and our staff say bullying is an issue. We hear frequently that school climate is an issue. All of our buildings, the families say that they agree that there's a positive school climate. And so the middle school was the scale score was 3.09%. Interestingly, the elementary school was 3.33%, early childhood center 3.47%, and then the high school at 3.23%. And this is what our families actually put on the surveys. There are some opportunities because we have them and we are working towards them. Communication definitely is a growth opportunity. So while we've seen some growth at the district level, 2 of our buildings have opportunities. That's the elementary school and also the middle school were highlighted as growth opportunities. We already responded to this. Ed Ridge sent out a survey to parents saying, what information do you want? How frequently do you want it? What does that information look like from families, from teachers, and then the platform by which they want to be communicated with, whether it's a text message, telephone call, etc. And then the last one is student respect, value, and recognition. Families feel like we need to do some work there at the middle school at 2.89%, which was the lowest scale score indicated from family feedback. That concludes the update of the disaggregated climate and culture data. I welcome any questions you may have. As a note, we have our second administration, which should have closed already. We will bring that data back and compare to see if we've made any inroads from the initial data from, I think we took this in September.
I would appreciate being able to see, maybe as an addendum to this, the actual questions that were asked. I actually read the first, the staff survey results around bullying as bullying happening amongst teachers, because there is not like a clarification here on that. So if that question, it would be nice to be able to see the full prompts that were responded to, as opposed to just the synthesis which is necessary for this sort of presentation.
Given that this data was collected in September and it took DESE this long to disaggregate it for us, do we have any hope that we will get disaggregated data from the second survey within a reasonable period of time to be able to chart those improvements, understand what has worked, because we know there have been many interventions that have been applied at the building level to create some meaningful action for next school year? What's our hope in that?
There's hope.
There is hope. But I will say, my leaders know their buildings. I would say that the disadvantage would be for the newly transitioning principal at the high school, because there would not have been time to actually experience and see. So there wouldn't be time for planning and responding per se. But they have, DESE is short-staffed, and so they've outsourced the collection of data to the University of Missouri-Columbia. And so one of the acts that I had included them giving a overview to show comparisons for those individuals who actually, the districts that actually opted in to take the survey results, so you can see a comparison in regards to how are you faring in regards to other districts. So we don't have, it took a long time to actually dig through this. To Katie's question about the questions, because some of the questions were not as clear cut. I think they could make some adjustments with the survey itself, but then also giving community an overview of what does standard deviation mean and why does that matter, and then also a clear description of what each of those categories are, because the categories that we got now from the district level data looks nothing like this. And so it took me time to go through and actually try to make sense of the data, and then the first set of data that we received was basically just a list of numbers, and I had to go through and actually try to make some connections and take what I know to be occurring in my buildings on a regular basis. I will tell you that the stuff that I saw was not a surprise to me. I know which buildings need to continue to improve in communication. I know the buildings that have concerns and issues with bullying. I think getting a better understanding of how parents perceive things to be this way is something that I would like to further unpack through some focus groups. But I am not very hopeful, unfortunately, that we will get the data before the end of the year. It would be nice to, because the building principals are taking the priority areas from the strategic plan and the goals, and there is a piece around climate and culture that they will be addressing in their individual buildings, but we're not having relevant and recent data. It's almost impossible to do that. They'd be planning off of data from September. Stale data.
When you mentioned discipline, you're talking about student discipline, right? Or you're talking about just discipline across the board?
So they have not codified how they define discipline. And so the way that I see it is that if a student is asked whether or not discipline is handled fairly, I will say that there have been some focus groups held, and there have been things highlighted. I think Dr. Evers Phillips, when she did some focus groups at the high school around hiring of principals, some things surfaced around how students are disciplined if you have an IEP, how students are disciplined if you fall, you could be white, but your socioeconomic status is that of a student who is a student of color, and that student is disciplined the same way. And so there are things that we're still trying to understand and helping individuals to see that there is a fair way to approach discipline. But it could be whether or not a student gets suspended, if they have an opportunity to access BDE, which is a more restorative approach, whether or not a student who does the same thing in a classroom based on another peer, how they're disciplined or allowed to do. I'm sure there are a number of things that go into that, but that's based on the student's perception, that's based on the parent's perception. But what we do on the district side, for example, when I do my principals evaluations, I pull up their discipline data and I look at the demographics of the students. I cross-reference that with student achievement data to see if we are being equitable in our approach. So I think this is just one data point, and I want to continue to say that. I think, it's a requirement for DESE, but I don't think it paints a very accurate picture of what's happening in our schools.
Well, I guess I'm just trying to figure out the correlation between bullying and discipline and whether or not, is there a standard, I can ask this later.
No, it's okay.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I'm new to all this, and so I didn't know if the school, each school has its own step discipline policy, these are, this infraction gets this infraction gets that, or is it more open, we take it, it's sort of like a holistic approach?
There is a policy around bullying, and that policy outlines that an investigation has to occur. We actually just, at the last admin council, provided some additional training Vince Estrada did around the bullying policy and how to investigate. Our student expectation code is gray. So there is no black or white, and I do think that there are benefits to have gray to your question, because it allows you, if you have a student, for example, it's their first offense and they just made a very poor choice, and you have a student who's a repeat offender, I hate to say it that way, who the consequences may need to vary, but we don't have a very clear student expectation code. I actually slid a note to one of our administrators asking if they would be willing to lead some of their work. So I'm very familiar with what should happen in a student expectation code. Folding in restorative practices is actually a strength of mine, but it is work that we need to continue to do. So to answer your question, not yet, but we do have a policy, but it is very gray. And our principals try to do their very best to be fair to students in certain situations. And I would say I've just a conversation with Dr. Dietrich with a situation he handled with care. If we did have something that was so concrete, it could have put a student in a situation. So it's complicated.
So what can the board do to help?
Trust me and my team to do the right work, and when we bring a new expectation code forward, ask the right questions, and hold us accountable for the things that we put in. So thank you for asking that. Oh, I guess I'm going to take this off and let everybody see my trashy.
All right. If we have no other questions, we'll move on to 4.02, our strategic planning update with Dr. McGee.
Evening, everyone. Glad to give you another update on progress for our strategic plan. When we were together last on the 6th, we did a board workshop where we gave some feedback on mission, vision, core values, portrait of a graduate, a lot of those defining foundational words that set the tone for the strategic plan. After that, we gathered on the 13th of April to have our final steering committee. So I bring up our district website again just to highlight that all the documentation for all these meetings are found on our website under programs, and then click on strategic planning. We just finished on 413 meeting 6, so when you click on that, you'll see what happened, when it happened, and then the resources are located down here, which are the same resources that were uploaded to tonight's board docs. I wanted you to see, the participants that were involved in that, as well as some of their feedback. So you'll notice here where it says Jamboard, when you click on that, it takes you to a PDF of the submissions and the feedback as we were looking at different layouts for portrait or graduate and different concepts related to that. I will say that throughout this week, we have done a second round of focus groups to get final feedback on all of our key priority areas, as well as our outcomes and strategies associated with them. So we're excited to, as a cabinet, review that feedback on Monday to make final recommendations. Good news is we have already started conversations with the graphic designer. We've submitted initial resources related to graphics and media, thanks to Mr. Rich for that support. And we're the home stretch. So our goal is to bring you a clean, pretty document in May. I am under no illusion that at some point in time something will go wrong, much like our calendar situation. And we do have obviously a backup of the opportunity to meet in June to a board that to approve that, but we do want to bring you that final document in May at our board meeting. I believe is the 18th. I will plant this little seed as a tagline to overarch our work and to frame the strategic plan, and it goes a little something like this: honoring our history, shaping our future. Kind of a cool little thing for us to think about and frame up the rest of the work that we're doing. Any questions about where we are in the strategic planning process and what we're ready to bring to you in May?
Just thank you again for all the hard work, the tedious work, but the important work.
I just want to add, in the board note, there is a draft board letter to the community. Please review it. You have editing rights. I think deadline for that is the 25th, so we can get that to the individuals that are putting everything together. It is a starting point, so if you do not like what's in there, change, modify, trash, but just to give you something to start with.
Well, I'd say email proposed changes so that everybody can agree on them.
Is it a Google Doc?
It is a Google Doc.
So we can see each other's suggested edits?
Yes.
All right. We can do that.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you. 4.03 construction update.
Okay, you have the weekly memo there. I will give you just a few brief highlights. This particular week, if you've been on campus at all, other than the exciting day when they took Cliff, the giant crane, out and got trucks stuck down there at the corner because they went the wrong direction, that was an exciting few hours. Anyway, we're sort of in the doldrums again while we wait for the iron workers to finish the decking for the second floor. They are now working on putting together what will be the new storefront on the eastern facing side of Building A. But you're not seeing a whole lot yet. It's exciting to see the concrete trucks and all that rolling, but that's going to be a couple weeks out. But once we do get those floors poured, things will start cruising again. One thing that's really important that we'll be doing in the next couple weeks is laying our furniture plan on top of the electrical plan to make sure that the furniture that we're putting in place isn't covering data and power. And I see James smiling because every construction project we've done, we've put furniture in front of the data and power, and that just doesn't make any sense. So we're far enough in front of it now to where we can move the locations of things to accommodate and hopefully not fall into that trap yet again. Flex space downstairs, if you are familiar with this building, walk down to the bottom of the stairs and into the music area and you will see it's dark right now because the lights aren't turned on yet, but a very long hallway, and it will be very bright and well lit. Instead of walking into a wall and stairs, it's a very open, inviting environment, just as we envisioned. The SAGE program will be moving out of their room the end of this week and into the Fine Arts Flex space temporarily. Demolition will begin on Tuesday. Mike, is that what we decided? Tuesday is when we're starting again. We'll be wrecking that wall that is bordering the wrestling room and the stage room. And by July, mid-July, we'll have a completed choir room that will be absolutely fantastic and I think meet the needs of our music students down in that area for years and years to come. I don't think it's possible that she'll outgrow that space, which is great. As a musician, it's a wonderful asset to have in our building. The West Stack restrooms are all but complete. Doors are going up. Mirrors should be going up, if not this week, early next. So we'll be able to open those to students very soon. And let's see, that's really about what's going on. You see the budget numbers there, so we're still in pretty good shape. We do have a little bit of reserve in this scenario. Furniture bids will be coming to you probably in the next couple months. One thing that we do need to talk about tonight, and I'm not sure what's going on with my phasing plan document, but all of the little yellow bars seem to be covering all of the dates, and that's not the way that I downloaded it, so I don't know what's going on there. But I've been telegraphing for the last few months that we are very seriously considering moving the opening date of Building A, which is this big skeleton of a building out here, to mid-October. We're going to do that. We are rephasing a couple of other things. By moving that to mid-October, that forces the classroom spaces on the first floor next to the cafeteria to completion dates in February. Just because the offices that we need to move into can't be vacated until the building opens. So it's one of these, I have nowhere to put all of those people until the offices are complete. So we'll need to make sure that we're working very carefully with the high school and middle school through the scheduling season, which is now, to make sure that we're scheduling and doing the correct programming. But some exciting changes. I won't go through this entire document. I will try and get you a copy that doesn't have all the dates blocked. One of the things on here that you may notice, I've asked of our general contractor that the courtyard and at least the entrance through the gym lobby be complete for the start of school. I see that it's on here in September. I didn't notice that until I posted the document, which I didn't receive till late yet last night. So we'll get that adjusted. That's kind of one of those things. that I think we absolutely have to commit to having. Our students need that space when school starts. One additional thing that we've put in place this week is we want the front of the building to be, for all intents and purposes, complete, at least from looking at it, for commencement. So on June 2nd, I want the community and our students, our parents, to look at what is a complete building with landscaping. We won't have trees yet. We have to wait until the fall to plant the trees, but we'll have all the shrubs and the ornamental grasses and the landscape plan in place. So I'm excited about that. We've promised the city that we'd have that done as soon as possible. So that is the plan, and I'm looking forward to seeing our community enjoy that space at graduation.
So based on this phasing plan, I know that a lot of the finish dates are blocked out, but we can assume that those highlighted in yellow, there is a likelihood they will be completed by the start of school.
Yes.
And those highlighted in pink will probably be October or later.
Correct. And there's some pad built into this, and I mean, no one wants to miss their deadlines, but I'm pretty sure that we're going to be able to get this done. Any additional questions? Very well.
All right, I think we've got a video, item 4.04, about e-progress.
So this will just be a visual representation of what Chris just described for you. There she is, Building A. It's all in the northwest corner. This is all the foundation work. They're much farther ahead than when I shot this. So, and this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the area where the workout area will be, wrestling room, storm shelter, I believe, all down there. And then on top of all that will be the new gymnasium. So this is back around on the southwest corner. Good news about this is, for graduation, this will allow the students to do what they normally do, which is process out of the cafeteria and down onto the track. That's the way they need to do it. It's the way we have to do it this year. We have one graduate who uses a chair, so everything's going to work out just fine for everybody. And then finally, down in the fine arts area, still kind of a mess, but this is the area where Chris reported they still have to take a wall out. That's going to happen early next week. So that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are not presenting on item 4.05. It's been taken off the agenda, so we'll move on to 5.01, our 23 March financial statements. I should say it's not been taken off it will be deferred to a future meeting.
Okay, the financial statements, March financial statements, are there for you to review in all of their intricacy. I will briefly take you through the highlights. There we go. Okay, revenue. This is the breakdown. So again, like we talked earlier, local funding source is primary revenue stream for the district. Operating revenue, we're about $20.2 million, 83.5% of the budget. One exciting thing that did happen, and it's exciting to me, probably not to many other people, but the taxes paid under protest, the impounded taxes paid under protest, are typically released in mid to late May. So everyone that's in my position around the county is sweating because they need that money. And for us, it was $2.2 million that was impounded, and the friendly lawsuit releases it. They were able to release those funds last week. It's like the earliest I've seen it. It's been as late as June, which is really scary, but we took receipt of those funds like Wednesday or Thursday of last week, so that's fantastic. So I was excited to see that. Here's the breakdown of our expenditures. Like we also talked earlier, salary and benefits is the primary percentage of our expenses, investing in our people. Expenses are down about 2% through March. That's often timing. Everything's tracking as expected through March, but I did mention to you that salaries and benefits might be slightly overstated, so we'll do some more work in the next month to make sure that everything's tracking right. The good thing is that they're overstated, not understated. So that's if you're going to have a discrepancy, that's the direction we'd rather have it. Again, the athletics budgets for the new sports, and I now see kids and coaches walking around with javelins, which is sort of cool to see. I've never actually seen those thrown in person, and that's kind of a cool thing. Also tennis, and it's quite popular from what I hear. So right now we're about 65% of the budget and right up on track with where we've been in other years. Here's right now our budgeted fund balance, projected budgeted fund balance. I will likely bring a budget amendment this next month that'll have some changes to our federal programming's program, both revenues and expenses, and any changes we find in salaries and benefits will be reflected in that amendment as well. Any questions?
Let's go ahead and move on to 5.02, your part 3.
It's the same one I just did, sorry. Okay, so for our new board members, I believe I put it in the summary in the actual board agenda, but I start bringing, in the last few years I've been starting to bring pieces of the budget as early as February so that the budget workshops in June aren't so arduous. Those can be very long and tedious for all of us, so this allows us to chunk the budget and give you a blow-by-blow or month-by-month look as things develop. So this is the third presentation. So one thing that did happen is on years of reassessment, of which we are moving into the odd year, we are required by state law to submit our estimate of required local taxes to the county collector or the county clerk by March 8th. So that was done. So when I brought you the numbers in prior months, I didn't really have much other than historical data to base that tax rate on. But I'm also seeing that the tax rates aren't here. So I'll email this to you. That was an omission on my part, so I apologize for that. But it's important because those tax rates change the revenue. And since we did experience about a 20% increase in assessed value, CPI was about 6.5%. The maximum we can take is 5% on growth due to the Hancock 2 amendment limitations. So that number will be, I'll show you that in just a second. Here we go. So that'll generate about $16 million for operations, about $6 million for debt service, and $450,000 in capital projects. And we like to devote about 10 cents of that levy to capital projects, and that keeps us from having to transfer so much into that fund because the state also puts transfer limitations on Fund 4, or the capital projects fund, so this helps with that. State formula breakdown is, as you see. I was just glancing at the April financial memo from DESE, and it does look like they're increasing the allocation for Prop C sales tax for next year, which is fantastic. Sales tax seems to be increasing like gangbusters, which is great. Even through COVID, we were excited to see and surprised to see sales tax projections increasing. So that's good news for us. Federal funding, unfortunately, is either stalled or decreasing over the years, not necessarily because of our free and reduced lunch rate, but just because we're often in bypass, and we also have to divert some of those funds to our private parochial schools that are also within our district boundaries. I know these numbers are small, they probably look better on your screen than they do on this one. So you'll see last time I brought you a revenue number that was very slightly over what we had budgeted for this year. You can see that that's up about $780,000, and that's due to changes in our projected tax rate, which will also change. They send us updates in July, so we will we'll give those changes to you as they become available. Okay, salaries and benefits projected to increase 5.7% overall for fiscal year 24. Obviously, that's related to the CBTF recommendation that we've already gone over tonight, and also the support staff administrator salaries. Medical premiums, that's a big one. I shouldn't skip that. So medical premiums are projected to increase upwards of maybe 10%, which is incredible. We are in Tier 4, which there's a 5-tier system with the CSD Insurance Trust, and that's based on your claims ratios, on the amount of money the trust has to pay out on our behalf versus the amount of money we pay in. We are better than we have been in years past, but that's a 3-year rolling average, so it takes a couple of years to wash out a bad year. We've had a good year, so now we are back under the 100% threshold, so they're projecting right at that Tier 4 mark, and we'll get our actual rates in May. So by the time we talk again, we'll probably have had our spring meeting and had our actual rates. In my experience, we typically experience a smaller increase than what they project for us. I think as financial people kind of like to pad things a little bit. So I'm hopeful that we'll get in. We are talking with CBTF about some potential changes to the benefits package that would potentially net a little bit more savings, and also maybe provide some additional options for our employees in the area of insurance. Insurance is hard. It's anytime you start talking about people's medical benefits, health insurance, it's a very sensitive subject. Everybody uses those benefits differently, so we have to approach that topic with care and understand those things that I said. That it's very the level of importance of that topic is very different by employee. We just have to be careful as we approach it. So the projected expenditures are still not super accurate right now. It's still very early. We're still reviewing the budgets. Some budgets like to go together really easy. This one's sort of fighting a little bit, so that's fine. We'll get through it. We still have, you'll see a higher capital projects number than you've seen in recent years. That's okay. Dr. Dietrich and I, Dr. Jameson and I will look at all of those together and set the priorities based on need and available funds. I'm fairly sure that we won't be able to fit all of the things that we would like to in that capital projects budget, but we'll get as many in as we can. So this is the outcome. This is the same schedule that you saw earlier, and for our new board members and existing in our community as well, the projections I provide are only as good as the information that I have in front of me at the moment that I create them. And these change daily. They've changed at like 5 o'clock, so these are updated daily as changes to the budget are made. I met with one particular budget supervisor earlier in the week, and we were able to remove a sizable chunk of expenditures just by making different decisions about the things that we would buy and the programs that we would fund. Those conversations are still ongoing with every single one of our budget supervisors. So as we get closer to the finish line here, these numbers will start getting a little bit more firm, and I will let you know when things are about the way I think they're going to land. So I'll bring a more complete version of this to you next month. Happy to answer any questions.
Just thank you for how thorough it always is, and easy to understand. I know when I first joined the board, I was like, what? And it's just very comprehensive, so I appreciate it.
Very well. Happy to do it.
All right, thank you, Chris. We're ready to move on to board communications. We've got some committee reports tonight. I see. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I'll piggyback off of what Chris had said. We were at CDTF. New board members, that's our compensation benefit task force. We were reviewing absolutely health insurance plans and options, some discussions about unused sick days, and reviewing, combining our sick and personal days. We really, quite honestly, we're ending the school year. We did our big lift with the salary schedule for teachers, and we're just finishing up some stuff to probably one more within this school year. And we already started developing what we plan to work on for next year. Also, on the same night, is Joe's Place. Just want to let you know about a fundraiser for Joe's, which is next Thursday. So for those of you that will not be at the employee recognition, but it goes from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Thursday, April 27th. There's a dime to donate at Llewellyn's in Webster. Please remember to say it's for Joe's Place. If you cannot attend, of course you can donate. We currently have 3 residents. We are ongoing updates to the house and helping the house parents out and making sure they have everything they need. We are in need of some donations, whether financial or in kind. We are due to have a STL Give Day, so that's coming, so be on the lookout, and there should be some clear items or finances that we want to support for that. We've gotten some more board members and moving and growing, and I agreed to help with the social media push. Yay! Not very good at that, so, but it's exciting. We're growing. They're doing really great.
We'll repost your posts. How's that?
Yeah.
We'll help you with the social media.
We'll help you with that.
Is there a link on their website?
There is a link to donate. There is not currently, but I believe our person is working on it. When she creates the STL Give, then it'll all link together.
Okay.
And when I get that, I will blast it through Facebook and Instagram and see. And I might tag some people because I don't go on those a lot. My algorithm doesn't work as well, so I may pull some people that their algorithm shoots out a little bit better than mine.
As far as the dime out,
yes,
is that a flyer that's going to be on Joe's Place social media, or is something going to send out?
It's a great question. I saw it in paper form. I will find the answer to that and let you know.
Perfect.
For the Legislative Advocacy Committee, we actually have our next meeting, our region-wide meeting led by Massa tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. So no, I shouldn't say there's nothing to update. There's a lot to update. I have included the moving bills snapshot list as of about a week ago. That's from MSBA, all proposed legislation that's impacting K-12. Read it at your own peril. I had an opportunity to visit Jefferson City at the end of March to share the district's legislative priorities in person with our representatives within this district, as well as our adjacent representatives that we were redistricted away from last year. So they are informed of our priorities and have let us know that our priorities match the priorities of our adjacent districts and that they are fully in support of our priorities. But as is the case when you are the minority in your legislature, there is not a lot of action they can take on our behalf except to continue to show up and advance their values and ours, which are pretty closely aligned. So we'll update you all again after tomorrow's meeting and let you know what we learn. But I think as we're seeing with the policy updates that we're moving through this year, that legislative session last year that we're now needing to respond to at a policy level is really nothing compared to what we will be facing next year in terms of what we will potentially need to be addressing. So we are lucky to have a very strong attorney to help us with that work. In board scholarship news, today is the last day to donate for the Nelson Mitten Scholarship. So if anybody hasn't made their gift, you have just a little under 3 hours to do it. We'll count it anyways. But a couple of key things to note: we do have the scholarship night coming up, so all donors to the scholarship will receive a personal invitation to attend next month. And I think we'll be looking at final numbers in executive session tonight when we look at the student applications, final fundraising numbers. Looks like Brandy's presenting the calendar of events according to our agenda.
I think that's an error, Madam President.
All right, well, key events to note, as Rachel mentioned, we have our employee recognition event next Thursday, April 27th at 9 Mile Garden. Excited for to receive our scripts from Ed. So we all have a role to play in that, in honoring all of the district employees. And as I mentioned, scholarship night is coming up on May 16th. That's a Tuesday night in the theater here at the high school. A lot of year-end talent on display. So whether it's band or theater or choir, there's something for everyone. Am I doing this?
Excellent.
Enough flavor? I'm trying to match you. Okay, let's move on to our action items. 7.01 construction change orders.
Move to approve construction change orders as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7.02, support staff recommendation.
Move to approve the support staff salary schedules as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Brandy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 7.03, administrator recommendation.
I move to approve the recommended 4.5% administrator staff salary increase as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Brandy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 7.04, E-rate contracts.
Move to approve the Category 1 contract from Clearwave for interbuilding fiber optic connectivity for $221,760 across 5 units, which MRH currently pays 50%, which is $110,880. And the Category 2 contract from ENT for 20 networks, which is in the amount of $85,551.79, of which MRH will pay 50%, which is $41,666.64.
Well done.
Second.
And you're welcome.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Linda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 7.05, academic calendar proposal 2024-25.
I move to approve the 2024-2025 academic calendar as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 7.06, career ladder.
Move to approve the proposal to apply for the state career ladder grant program for 23-24 school year.
Second.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Brandy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. 7.07. Who's going to take us into executive session?
So don't
the
we-
retiring president should.
Go ahead, Brandy, knock it on out.
I thought we
are we forcing the newbies?
Our newbies do it. Since my computer's dead anyway.
All right. You want to go, Judge?
Okay. I move to enter executive session in accordance with section 610.021 subsection 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, and 13, and section 610.022 of the revised Missouri statutes of April 2023 for the following specific reasons: personal matters, identifiable subject matter, or student matters.
Second.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Brandy. Roll call.
Ms. Goldsman?
Yes.
Ms. Martinez?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Hernan Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Whitcomb?
Yes. Great. Meeting adjourned. Do I hit it?
Yeah.